Welcome to Hellbilly, the darker side of Appalachia. Just a friendly reminder not to whistle, sing, or scream into the darkness because you might find yourself surrounded by skinwalkers or someone who might be there to steal your catalytic converter or some copper wire. Either way, it won't be pleasant. Tonight, we are going to talk about coal mines, and everything in between. What they did, what they didn't do, and what they left us with when they disappeared en masse. And to be fair, there are still some in operation in parts of Southwest Virginia, West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, but not in the way that they used to be, and definitely not in the economically booming way that they used to be, but we'll get into that. I think the best place to start is at the beginning. And the beginning is, what is coal and how was coal formed? Coal, being a fossil fuel, was formed when dinosaurs became fossils. So, millions of years ago when dinosaurs, I almost said diamonds, there's a reason for that. But anyway, when dinosaurs roamed this planet, and they were like munching on trees and munching on each other, and they were big and they were flying and they were just like meh, 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 meh. And it was like the land before time and so on and so forth meets Jurassic Park. And then all of a sudden a great big comet thing crashed into what people think was off the coast of Mexico and obliterated them all. Yeah, they died. And their remains turned into fossils and then became fuel. I'm not going to break down the science of that because, good Lord, that is, again, disclaimer, counselor, way above my pay grade. But that's how we got coal. And if we move forward a little bit into human history, when, men, just kidding, guys. When humans started learning how to fend for themselves and fire was created, coal was at the heart of that. You better believe coal was at the heart of that. I had a feeling and I double checked myself, and yeah, coal was at the heart of that because coal burns. And coal is a fuel and it runs through. There are seams of coal that run through rock. That's why we have coal mines. And so when the first humans were out there making their fire and doing the cooking and all of that stuff, a lot of the stuff that they were using was coal. And, good for them. They were cooking. They were cooking with coal. Rightfully so. They weren't worried about, money. They weren't worried about, any of the stuff that came later. They were just like, oh my God, look at this orange and yellow thing that's burning and damn, shit, hell, that, can't touch it. That hurts. Oh, but look, I don't have to eat raw this thing anymore, and it tastes good cooked, so cool. And now I can see at night. This is great. This is fantastic. Let's get some more of this stuff out of this rock over here. That's great. And we'll carry it around and we'll just, and so on and so forth. And so fire became a thing, and one thing led to another, and humanity went onward and zip, 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 zip. In our magic time machine, we come to Appalachia. And you may or may not have noticed that a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about over the past, this is the third episode, repeats itself, and it does for a reason, because it all runs together. And that's the thing about history that we still have not yet learned. Looking at you, America, right now, all of you, is that until we recognize the links in the chain, we are never going to stop repeating the same thing. It all bleeds together. So we come back to Central Appalachia, where the Industrial Revolution has occurred. And people are like, oh, hey, science is valuable. And we now have steam-powered engines, which means that fire needs something to make it. And what makes fire? Coal. Other things make fire, but coal specifically. And where, oh, where can we find an abundance of coal? Ooh, the Appalachian Mountains. Let's head on over there because the people over there that we have isolated probably can take advantage of, aren't very educated, hillbillies nonetheless, and we'll offer to pay them, like I said, undervalue for their land, or just take it from them. And that is where we will start the essence of our story. It's a story that starts in a lot of ways underground, under the mountains, in the mountains themselves, within the caverns of the volcanic rock. I'm not being that sarcastic right now because there is a sense of reverence to this to me. Because a lot of people suffered and a lot of people died during this portion of our history. And I'll get sarcastic in a minute. Trust me, it's there. It's coming. For right now, I think it needs to be noted that the matter is not just about coal, the mineral itself, but about the machinery that was built around it, the companies, the capitalism, the taking advantage of the people, the taking from the people to get what they wanted, which was the building onward and upward, manifest destiny across the country, because the idea is ever onward, growth at all cost. And it still is that way. Growth at all cost. The dark truth is that for a long stretch of human history, Central Appalachia was treated less like a home and more like an extraction zone. We come in, we take, we leave, we take using the backs of the people. We break them down because mining coal is hard work. It's deadly work. And for the longest time, OSHA didn't exist. Come on now. You know what? You had your canaries and God and a prayer. People died. Black lung. It was backbreaking. It was deadly. Coal came out. Wealth went everywhere but Appalachia. And then they left the bill with the people. Just kind of ridiculous if you think about it. It's like, thank you for your time, ma'am, sir. Thank you for letting us ravage your home. Also, here's the invoice for that. We'll be on our way. It shaped the region for more than 2 centuries. It's like 200 years of doing this. But yet, the legacy still remains. It's still there. It hovers. You can drive through these mountains, and it's beautiful. But everywhere that you drive, you can still see the ghosts of this industry and what it has done. It is pervasive and haunting, and it's in the people. You sit and talk to them long enough, especially the ones that are old enough to remember this stuff, and you learn a few things about what it's like to be treated like second-class citizens, about what it's like to be forced into what I had already called indentured servitude, because technically it is, and how it is to develop a work ethic that is just, frankly, intolerable and unsustainable. A work ethic that we now see as being normal. You bust your back for the company for whom you work, come rain or shine, to the point of death sometimes, and that's what you do. How did this all happen? Well, last episode, we talked about how people came over with their papers. It was land acquisition. In order for them to do that, they had to acquire the land. They had to be like, hey, you have something that we want. We can't just take it, even though some of them did, because they were smooth talkers, I imagine. Or they just did it. But some of them had papers, and they were like, hey, we have this deal for you to make. And I'll give you this, and here you go. So you've got investors, timber interests, railroad companies, because they needed a way to move all of this stuff from the mountains, outside of the mountains, into the other parts of the country, because, once again, the mountains are large and dense, and you'll hear me say that a lot. Large and dense. Large, dense. And they needed a way out. They had no way to really say no. And if they said no, they were probably pressured in ways that were less than legal. Let's be honest. Let's be honest here. By my understanding, some people kept their surface land but lost everything underneath it, so they didn't get a penny of it. In fact, a lot of families, by my understanding, didn't see a dime. It was, again, outright common robbery because nobody respected the people. Nobody cared about it. It was just, you have these resources. We want these resources. We're going to take these resources from you. We don't care about you. You say this is your land? Eh, now it's ours. What does that sound like? Hmm. I don't know. It sounds like what happened at the beginning when we first got here to the indigenous people. History repeating itself yet once again. Think about that. Take a moment. Okay, I'm back. Did you think about it? Have you thought about it? Has it settled kind of like that crusty bit of cheese in your stomach? Heartburn? The cherry on top, the salt in the wound, is that not only are they saying, hey, we're going to take your land, or we're going to take what's underneath it, and you're going to like it, now reach around, you're going to work this for us. Then we're going to pay you, but we're going to pay you in script. I gave you a brief explanation of what script was, and so we'll gloss over that a little bit. But the idea is they're building this whole world in this area that was doing, I guess, relatively fine on their own. I don't know. They were minding their own. They were making do. Making do. They living their lives, doing their thing. They were just like, you know what? We were just chilling, minding our business, maxing and relaxing. They weren't shooting b-ball at the time. I don't think it existed outside of the school, but they were just chilling. And then suddenly, because of, steam-powered engines needing coal to power their steam engines and timber to build things and iron for ore and steel and so on and so forth, here we go. We have the introduction again to wage labor. You all are going to work for us if you want to keep your homes, if you want to keep your land. And, of course they did. Why wouldn't they? Why would they not? I would want to keep my house, wouldn't you? I mean, it's the worst, one of the worst raw deals that somebody could probably get. If you really think about it, it's like I'm farming my garden one day and somebody comes up and it's like, hey, this land that you're standing on, well, I'm going to give you a little bit less for it, or I'm going to take it from you outright. And then I'm going to make you work to keep it. And you're just kind of standing there like Vincent Vega, looking back and forth, holding your coat, like, brother, man, I was just like 2 seconds ago farming my garden, and you're telling me what? Say what? Are you crazy? Are you taking crazy pills? Obviously, people were getting angry. I would be angry. Would you not be angry? I'd be pissed. I would be pissed. Nonetheless, people went to work because they had to have a job. And as I mentioned once before, the companies owned everything. They owned the houses, the stores, the doctors, the schools, the churches. They made the laws. There were no independent local governments, typically no local democratic controls. It was a free-for-all. It was insane. These people were insane. It was like anarchy. The only control, the only government were the companies. The companies were the law. They made sure to keep these people in check by keeping them permanently in debt. So you were permanently behind on rent, permanently behind on bills, permanently underpaid, permanently overcharged. They could evict you, blacklist you, and then get mad at you when you were like mad about it, asking what even is happening here? Which reasonable response to all of this? What the fuck is even happening here? Like, I'm working day and night for you. You're giving me money, and yet you're still telling me I'm behind on rent, and you're the one that's paying me, and you're the one that owns my house. How am I behind on rent? Color me confused on that there, boss man. It's like gaslighting to the nth degree. Yet they got away with it because they were the ones that made the law. There was no check and balance system by the government in this situation. None whatsoever. There was not yet a union. There was nothing that prevented this from happening to these people. They exploited the division between races on purpose. Anything they could do to keep tension high, people stressed and fighting, so nobody would ask any questions. But what they didn't understand was that the higher the tensions got, because the workload was astronomically brutal, the higher the tensions got, the worse the outcome was going to be when it finally tipped over. In the meantime, the companies were creating division, sowing division between races, sowing division in homes because of money and stress and lack of food and being behind on rent, sowing division within the body from brutal work, from being on your belly and your knees, working yourself to the bone, dying from cave-ins, explosions, developing black lung from bad ventilation, poisonous gases, suffocation, child labor in certain areas, shifts that were longer than they had any right to be, and no safety net for any of this. Getting maimed, if that happened to you, was your problem, not the company. There was no workman's comp. Sorry about that. You're just screwed. Did you lose your leg? Oh, shit. No prosthetic for you there, bud. If you died, your widow was lucky to get sympathy, or their sympathy, or her sympathy, or anybody's sympathy for that matter. Mostly she probably got some funeral food from the community, but she wasn't getting any kind of stipend or pension from the company. That's about it. Just community help. And there you go. Worse if y'all had children. And the thing to remember is that one of the takeaways right now, truly, is that this powered our country. It created a system of travel, both on land and on sea. But this is the cost for that. And some people will say, well, for greatness there comes great cost. Well, you tell that to these people. Some of them might agree with you. Some of them might take you out back and beat the shit out of you. I don't know. Be worth looking. And then comes a whole new problem. A big fucking problem for the companies. And that is called union, baby. To this day, a lot of companies hate that word. I remember working for Walmart when I became a department manager going through training, and I was told that if anybody approaches you about a union, you go straight to a manager. And I just laughed and laughed and laughed. And it's like, yeah, I'll do that. That's the first thing I'll do. Absolutely not. The word union strikes fear of a lot of companies because it organizes workers. That's what it does. And they needed it. They really, really needed it because they were striking out in large numbers. So by this time, we've reached the early 20th century. And what we're about to talk about is the Battle of Blair Mountain. And some of you may know about this. This is in southern West Virginia. In 1921, thousands of miners marched in West Virginia in what is known as the largest armed insurrection since the Civil War. This is the largest armed labor insurrection in American history, actually, as far as workers go. They brought in army, air, all of it. People were fucking done. They said, hold my beer and my pickaxe. I am finished with this bullshittery. I am no longer dying so that you can sit there and puff on your cigar and laugh at the fact that I just lost a limb. And Billy over there, his widow is living in hell. They also call it the Mine Wars. It started out as strikes, then it became gunfights, martial law. There were armored trains, private detectives, shootouts between miners and company forces. Where it really, really sticks out here is, and I want you to take this to the fucking bank. This matters because it destroys the idea that Appalachia is passive, ass backward, and politically inert. We are not victims, especially in the coal fields. The communities there, we're not victims. And we sure as shit know how to push back if we need to. And these people, when they fought hard. The only problem was they were fighting against money. Massive money. Political influence, armed power, and state force. But they gave it a go, so good on them. So let's take a moment to remember the people at Blair Mountain in 1921 who had finally decided they had had enough of the capitalism that was eating and rotting away the soul of Central Appalachia. And let's pour one out for our homies. One thing that I heard growing up a lot in history is that a lot of this stuff was preventable. Things like explosions, collapses, floods, slurry failures, fires. These things were repeatedly exposed to the cost of weak safety enforcement, which I put personally on the companies that were running the mines and had the money. That's my opinion. If you are a company and you have the money, like we were just talking about when we were talking about the Battle of Blair Mountain, if you got all that money to fight back on your poor, you're tired, you're hungry coal miners, then you got all that money to make sure that they're safe, don't ya? Question mark? Crickets? Just, okay, all right. But these things continued to happen. They still do. People started calling them acts of God. Oh, it was an act of God that the mine flooded. It was an act of God that there was a mine collapse. And sometimes those things happen. I'm not going to say that they don't. You can have all of your proverbial ducklings in a row, and things can still happen, for sure. But I think we all know that companies do cut corners for the sake of the bottom line, and people do get hurt. So once again, we're going to focus on West Virginia in 1972. An example of that is the Buffalo Creek disaster, when 3 coal waste dams failed and a flood tore through the hollow beneath it. It's one of the most devastating mine disasters in U.S. history, according to MSHA. Another one is Upper Big Branch in West Virginia in 2010. 29 miners were killed. That's 2010. It's 2026, folks. I'm tired and I ain't doing the math. My producer just said it's 16 years, so 16 years. It was concluded the disaster, and this is by federal investigators, was rooted in a corporate failure, air quotes by the way, that valued production over safety. Corporate culture failure valuing production over safety. You don't say. The Department of Labor and MSHA cited the company's corporate culture as the root cause, and investigative findings emphasized failures in ventilation, methane control, and rock dusting that allowed a methane ignition to cascade into massive coal dust explosion. Citation is from the U.S. Department of Labor. That phrase, though, corporate culture. What does corporate culture mean? I guess it really depends on what your company defines it as. Corporate culture. I have only ever experienced it as being a way to boost morale such that the company can increase dividends. Let me put it in layman's terms. Make people feel like they are a part of a family so that they will make you more money, no matter the cost. Ultimately, though, it means that somebody somewhere made a fucking choice and corners were cut. Nobody was warned, or they were, and it was ignored. And people, those men, maybe some women, walked into conditions that never should have existed, and now they are dead. And their families are left to pick up the pieces. And it happens again and again and again and again and again ad nauseum in coal country. And this is why, in part, not just because of climate, which is another conversation in and of itself, but this is in part why we talk about the coal industry, because it's not being regulated the way that it should be, the way that they claim it is. But you know what? Pop off if you want to. Pop off about your coal. I know that it gives people jobs, but what if we could find another way? Because the one thing that I sure as shit wouldn't do is take from my people their ability to feed their family. And for a lot of people that still work in the open mines that are left there, that's all they've got. So, what if we could find another way? Skirt! We're going to switch gears now to another problem, an ongoing problem, one that kills and kills slowly, and that's called black lung. Pneumoconiosis. I think I pronounced that right. Comes from the inhalation of coal. Well, the dust, rather. You can't inhale coal. That would be hard, and you would probably choke on the way down. um, and it would be very painful. Don't do that. Don't stick coal in your mouth and try to inhale it. Don't do that at home, kids. I swear to God, if this becomes a TikTok trend, no. No. If I had a spray bottle, no. Inhaling coal mine dust and the particles of God knows what across time from working in the mines. In severe cases, it can progress to massive fibrosis, which I don't think I need to tell you is severe. It's debilitating, devastating, deadly. But guess what's even worse? I'll give you 3 guesses. The first 2 don't count. It's preventable. I know it keeps coming back, especially in Central Appalachia. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, reported that black lung prevalence continued to rise among long-tenured underground miners, and that Central Appalachian miners were disproportionately affected, with as many as 1 in 5 miners with at least 25 years underground showing evidence of black lung, the highest level recorded in 25 years at the time of the report. They have continued screening miners and described bringing those screenings to areas hit hardest by the black lung epidemic. 1 in 5. 1 in 5 of our people. These are our people. Just grab a handful of us, okay? Let's just imagine. All right, let me put into perspective for you, okay? Let's say we all go to, I don't know, we all go to a Perkins, right? Multiple somebodies in that bitch. 1 in 5. We all go to church. Depending on how full the church is that day, especially, say it's Christmas or Easter, 1 in 5. Multiple somebodies have black lung. And the worst part is that the further that the miners dug, they would dig and dig and dig, they would get through the coal on the outside. and then they would get into the thinner seams on the inside, which held silica, and it would become nastier, harder. Like, just, I don't know the proper terms for whatever that is. It would just be like gross. And basically, we're looking at like scar tissue, and it's just bad. It's just bad. So, 2 years ago, my friends, Mine Safety and Health Administration issued a final rule to better protect our nation's miners. And it lowered the permissible exposure to respirable crystalline silica to 50 micrograms per cubic meter over an 8-hour shift. Coal compliance was originally set for April 14 of 2025. That was just last year. And that's coming up about a year ago. Tomorrow's Fool's Day, 1st of April. But MSHA later said it would temporarily pause enforcement for coal operators while litigation continued. So, guess what? Even today, today, when we have electric cars that we can plug into things, and we have little plug-in ports for these electric cars, and after generations of dead miners and families torn apart from stuff like this, we are still arguing in litigation over basic PPE to prevent dust exposure. This is all normal. I use that term loosely. Am I the only one that sees the problem here? Am I? Problem? We're still arguing over PPE in 2026 when we have survived a massive pandemic and we can't help coal miners survive black lung, which is a preventable thing to survive. Okay. Tell me you don't care about people without actually telling me you don't care about them. I'll wait. And I think I'm going to end up getting a lot of pushback on this episode, maybe. And that's fine. Gotten pushback in real life about this topic from people because you know what? Again, as I mentioned earlier, people need jobs. What are we going to do without our jobs? And I get it. I do. Like I said, I'm not trying to take jobs from anybody. I'm not arguing the point of taking jobs from anyone. I'm just saying there has to be a better way. A better way. Because it did bring money into Central Appalachia. Eventually, once the union was established. But it also tied our identity to this particular industry, which is not always a bad thing. Because with this industry became labor, work ethic, toughness, survival, and I will say that work ethic, though, a little off-kilter to a point. But the wealth was never distributed evenly. Amen to that. Can I get a hallelujah in the back? Hallelujah! It wasn't distributed evenly, and it was not distributed locally. You can't see my face, but I'm blinking with a straight face. What we ended up with in Welch, West Virginia, is a really good example of that. Is that what happened was because the wealth was not distributed locally, is that if a mine closes, the money goes away. And if nothing is put there in its place that brings in the same amount, if not more, the town closes. So if the mine stays open, you live under its terms. If the mine closes, everything collapses, people leave, and everybody remembers they care about economic diversification after the economy is basically intubated. And if you've never been to Welch, I suggest you go there one day. Because it's very enlightening. It really is. It's basically full of trap houses that should be condemned with brand new Hummers parked on the outside. There's a first gen Walmart there, and maybe that's the part leading up to the town. The town, I get confused because there was a town there and then there was a part leading into it. I was only there for a brief time and it was for a funeral. But it was incredibly eye-opening and disparate in nature to what I was used to in Bristol, because Welch had relied on coal. I'll end with this. Coal built America. It gave Appalachia a legacy. For better or worse, it built us, it killed us. We saw very little money for it, but we suffered for it greatly in more ways than one. And this segment is setting up for a much darker history that comes as a result of this work, because everything is connected once you start looking at it. So once again, I thank you for sitting with me a spell. I hope you do it again. This has been a Strummer's Mom production. Thanks, Frank.